everyone. This is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Expert. If I don't get too tongue-tied, welcome everybody to another episode of the Inventive Expert, and excited to have another great guest on the podcast, Robert White. And Robert White, we're going to be talking about a few things today, including how to build a company and how to lose it or not lose it, as the case may be. Also, how to work with people from different demographics, whether it's age, gender, sex, race, ethnicity, any or all of the above, but how to work with all the different demographics throughout a business. Also talking maybe a little bit about the difference between working in a business versus working on your business, and the need for a CEO to promote their origin story for your business. And so it should be a great conversation and a lot of good topics at hand. And with that much as a short introduction, welcome on the podcast, Robert.
Hey, always good to be with you, Devin.
Hey, excited to have you on. So I just gave kind of a quick run through on some of the topics at hand. Now, before we dive into it too far, just as a quick reminder to the audience, so Robert was a guest on our sister podcast, The Inventive Journey. So definitely want to hear more about his journey and walk through that. Make sure to go check out his episode there. But for those that haven't had a chance or otherwise or wanting to just know just a quick overview about you, maybe take just a minute or two and introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm old enough for that to take up the whole podcast, but briefly, uh, because this is about being an expert, my expertise is building and leading, founding and leading high impact experiential education for executives. Those three companies over the years have graduated 1,400,000 people from these high impact experiences. And so building a business and also in our particular field, those are the two things I'm somewhat expert in. We'll kind of skip for now the things I don't do well.
All right, fair enough. Well, a good quick introduction, a good overview. So excited to dive into things for a bit. So we never t take the potential topics in any a particular order, but maybe one that I think was interesting that was the last one that on the list that I'd mentioned, but still a good one to hit on, is I think that sometimes you have kind of two different types of yeah, more than two different types, but a lot of business owners kind of fit into one or two categories, which is either they are great self-promoters and they'll never shut up about themselves and they'll always tell you how amazing and awesome they are to the point where you don't want to hear it anymore, or more often is you'll also hear people that are kind of shy away or don't want to put the focus on themselves or don't want to share the origin story and just want to make it about the business or the product or the service. And hopefully there's kind of a balance in the middle there. But when you kind of talk about, the need for the CEO to promote kind of the origin story of the business and otherwise share some of that backstory, kind of what are things or what should be people be considering or how do they go about balancing things?
Wow. I'm definitely in the latter. I am a severe introvert on all the tests, plus in my experience of myself. I did a lot of public speaking in my recent stay in China. And one of the things I learned is about me that I kind of knew it before, but it was vivid. I can appear before 2 or 3 thousand people and get a standing ovation. Everything goes great. I do what my daughter Megan calls my dancing monkey show to get on beyond my introversion. And then I go back to my hotel. I turn down all of the dinner invitations, go back to my hotel, order room service, and watch Romanian soccer on ESPN2 alone. Um, so I built through those three companies from behind the scenes. Most people in my space, in the general training, personal development, executive training field, put their name on what they do. So people know who John Maxwell is. His name's on the company. People know who Tony Robbins is because his name is on the company. They're both very public, and I'm very private. Uh, so both can work, but it needs to work for you, I think, and at a kind of heart level. And for me, it's always worked to be behind the scenes. Of course, when I wrote my book, I found out I have to go out in front. So that's been a little different for me to be a public face of something. Uh, but that's my sense. Our industry attracts people with big personalities, extroverts who can captivate a room. I'm pretty good in front of people, but it's by pushing myself to be pretty good.
So now how do you go about, because I mean, yeah, I don't, if you hide too far behind everything and that nobody ever knows anything about the company, the business, the backstory, anything else, I think you do yourself a disservice. So if you do take you probably being in the latter camp, then how do you go about, overcoming that or at least figuring out what works for you so you don't just hide in the hotel room and nobody ever knows anything, but you go about sharing some of that story. So kind of what are some ways that people that may be more of the int or natural introverts that can break out of that shell?
A part of it is I learned this from a trainer, a coach that I hired at one point. And what I learned is called an emotional shakeout. Because if you look at what engages people is feelings, not facts. And so you have that kind of personality where I want to know more about you, right? And that doesn't come naturally to me. So what I learned was to do this thing called an emotional shakeout. And that is basically if I'm backstage, if I'm in the next room, if I'm in my car on the way to an important sales call, what I do is I engage my physical body and I shake. I kind of go crazy, for a while and shout and yell and all that stuff. Uh, so that's one example because it's pretty hard to be that introverted self if you get yourself physically moving. And so that's one way to do it. Deep therapy helps for some people. If you can find a good therapist and who can work with you on connecting you to your purpose for every meeting, connecting you so that you get your belief system about yourself out of the way temporarily, at least. And then after you do that a few times, it becomes more natural and you can do less of it, whatever it turns out to be. But there are people that are expert in getting us out of our any self-image that is defeating our purpose. So, step one, figure out what your purpose is. Uh, why are you there? What kind of a contribution do you want to make? And what kind of, as my daughter says, dancing monkey show will you trot out to get the job done? Um, if you're motivated to do something, you'll do it. And if you're not, you won't.
So now maybe just and you just started to touch on it, but kind of, is it share everything about yourself from, hey, I'm Devin Miller. I have 4 kids. I have a wife that I've been married to for almost 20 years. I live on 19 acres of land. I like to, I mean, in other words, I can list a whole bunch of things which are true about myself, but I don't know that all of the clients that I work with, as an example, for the law firm, are going to find those all interesting or engaging or otherwise don't want to hear all of my life story. And so, any thoughts on kind of the balance of how much you share, whether it's origin story or your backstory or personally about you versus what you may hold back or, the audience may not find interesting
I think if
or
you're clear
potential
about
customers?
your purpose for the meeting, then you choose, because people do want to know more about you, but choose something from your origin story that connects to your purpose. Part of my origin story is that all those years ago, I went through one of the early human potential movement trainings. And so if I'm talking to somebody who's considering a personal transformational experience, I might talk about that, about my resistance before I went, about how I resisted in the actual seminar experience, and then what happened after it. Uh, so it is part of my origin story. It's personal. It's a bit emotional, but it ties into where I want to go in terms of conversation with that person.
No, and I think that makes sense. I'm always in that I put it out there, but it's I almost do it, half in jest, but not really. Usually when I set expectations for a meeting, it's hey, I like to be efficient. I like to be to the point. So do not like small chat by any means. But on the other hand, I realize that it's pretty hard, especially when the business is run oftentimes remotely. I connect with a lot of people on Zoom via phone calls and other remote type of setups that to establish or build that trust they have to be able to know a little bit about me or engage a little bit so you can see even on this one I have my Oh, wrong side. Other hand, reverse hand. Bio on the on the side that gives a little bit about favorite books and favorite movies and some of the businesses and startups I've done. If you were to ever log into a Zoom meeting, before while you're in the waiting room, it has a whole little video that you get to know a little bit about the firm, about IP, about myself. And so I think for me, that's what I found that works well is me just sitting down and telling you all about my origin story. I can do it, and I wouldn't shy away from it, but would I naturally enjoy it? Probably not, but if I can integrate that in so that people can still get a lot of that information in a way that I enjoy, then it tends to work out well. Shifting gears just a little bit, just because, a lot of fun topics at hand, and we could talk about probably this one the whole time. But, one of the things I think that goes along with that, to a degree, is the difference between probably what people like to do versus what they should do, which is working in your business versus working on your business, right? So,
Yes.
and so maybe I'll open it up first, kind of help us maybe understand what is the difference between working in your business versus working on your business.
When I was in China, I did a lot of public speaking, and I found myself quoting somebody that I didn't like quoting him because he sold 25 million copies of his book, The Seven Habits book. That's Stephen Covey. But the truth is that it's a pretty good book, and there's some real treasure in it. And one of the things that's what he talks about, that in or out, in or on the business thing. And so I'll steal his material and say that for most small, medium-sized business people, the issues come at you so rapidly and so consistently that you end up being a doing machine. There's little or no thought to be reflective or to look at the future that you really want to create, your vision, your purpose, your values. And yet they are foundational to the success of any business, any family, any community, any company, whatever. And but we get caught up in the distractions of getting stuff done and of the problems that come up in front of us. If you don't have some discipline to stop that, then working on your business, on where it is, vis-a-vis the competitors, vis-a-vis the environment that you're working in what has changed in your space in the last 6 months, 1 year. Um, and what you tend to do is just keep repeating old habits and attitudes and patterns because you're assailed with all this stuff that comes at you every day. People problems, that's a big one according to Harvard. They say 70% for small, medium-sized business people, 70% of the time is on people problems and not on the business, on cash flow, on effectiveness, and all of those things, the measurement things, because you're spending your time dealing with drama and issues with people. So what's your discipline to get past that? And for a friend of mine, he swims every day. I think you're a runner, and I'm guessing that's good for you, not just physically. Is that true?
Yep. On
Yeah.
both fronts, yes, it's certainly gives me a time to unplug and otherwise unwind and not focus on the business or to give myself. I oftentimes my thoughts will wander towards the business, but it's one where, a lot of times I find myself if I'm doing something outside of working directly on the business, it gives my me a time to ponder or to give other direction or a bit more high level. And then I guess I classify myself as a runner. The only difference is it's not that I love to run. It's just I like the health benefits and I like the doing something different to start my day. So I'd be a begrudgingly or an unwilling participant to running, so to speak. But yeah, that's a fair assessment.
I think anything that where you can quiet your mind and get it away from literally everything, that's the strength in the East, in, India, China, all of the great gurus in that part of the world is about working on your being, not just your doing. And here in the West, we are doing machines. Uh, and as long as we're doing, that's where you get into this reactive cycle where all of your work is solving the latest problem. Um, but some people run, some people swim, some people go for a walk in the woods. Some people have a study program that they're in. Maybe it's a foreign language, or I actually heard of somebody that's studying pottery. not something that I'm interested in, but uh, he is. So, and he finds it a really good time to allow that working on the business, thinking about the future. And my friend, the late John Denver, even wrote a song about it, The Potter's Wheel. And it's a metaphor for creation, creating anything, creating a great family, creating a great company. Um, and it all shows up in your hands. Well, different strokes for different folks, different things are going to work. Find a routine, find a discipline, find an activity, put it in your schedule, and then follow it. For me on fitness, I've been at my best in fitness when I've had a coach, when I've had a fitness coach, because I have to make an appointment, I have to pay somebody, so I keep the appointment where I might have sloughed it off before. Just in terms of discipline. I'm I don't have your discipline of every morning. So, but find something that works for you, but work on your business if you're the leader. Uh,
No.
all those other people that report to you, they're supposed to be doing the in your business part, and they're supposed to be getting some things done. Uh, and so, find a routine, find a practice, find a discipline.
No, I definitely agree on all those fronts. The only caveat I give is don't ha or have the illusion you'll still be working in your business plenty of the time. In other words, you're especially if you're a startup or small business, sometimes when you reach a big enough level, then you can take a significant step back. But if you're a startup or a small business, there's still going to be plenty of time where you're going to have to get things done and you will be wearing multiple hats and juggling things. But I think that, at least for me, the takeaway is you do need to whatever the activity is, whatever the way that you might disengage or otherwise, do something different that gives you that time to work on the business and have that higher level or directional and otherwise give it greater consideration can definitely be advantageous. And so I think that it's easy to work in the business, but to be intentional about working on the business is a great thing to focus on.
Yes,
We'll hit on just one other thing, and we're already, or it feels like time's flying by. We're already getting towards the end of the episode, but we have a few more minutes before I jump to my final questions. But before we do that, one of the other things that and it ties a little bit in with your inventive journey episode. So plug for that again is to for make sure to people to go check that out. But, one of the things you touched on, but I think is applicable to a large degree across the board for a lot of different startup and small business owners is, building a company that you don't lose in the end. In other words, sometimes it's easy when you're excited and you're wanting to get going, or, you see the big opportunity, the big idea to get the company going and sacrifice, and then you do all that work. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you can, lose a business or can otherwise get away from you and go in a direction that's less favorable to it. So how do you kind of build a company that you can avoid losing in the future?
well, I think part of it is a self-awareness of what you're good at and what you're not. So I'm good at creating a business and building it. I'm not as good as a lot of other people at running one. A word that I hadn't really understood until I experienced it is hubris. I built one of my companies went from zero to 45 million in revenue with 12 million in profit. And I got a huge offer, a buyout offer, and I turned it down. And at the time I turned that offer down, I said, I don't want to turn my people and this idea over to this basically a financial play, the company in Switzerland that was interested in buying it. And so I said no. And I felt very noble about it. What I found out about myself was it was hubris. I thought that everything would go on in the incredible pace, incredible profit, incredible value being created for the client, great fun. I loved all the people. Everything was great. And I thought that would just go on. What I found out is that, if you've got the largest training company in Asia, which I did, and you move to Aspen, Colorado and buy a jet and build a big house and get remarry and have a bunch of kids, I took my eye off the ball, number one. But number two, even if I would have stayed in Asia to hands-on run that business, it would have been like that. I remember in the old Ed Sullivan show, the guy that balanced plates, on on a wand, and he runs around and keeps all of them going. Well, that was how I ran the company. I just worked it. I long hours, many days, not many vacations. And but what I needed to do was to find a good operator, a good chief operating officer, and empower that person to do the things that I was not doing. And the other part of it is if you're in a thought leader business like you or me, uh, you've got to keep sourcing that business with fresh thought all the time. You've got to be on top of it. You've got to know what else is happening in the industry. You've got to keep up with the academic side of it, but also the experiential side. So if you don't do that, what's going to happen to you is what happened to me, firing 240 people and closing 15 training centers. Uh, you know, uh, worst, uh, it took 3 years, but the worst, certainly the most challenging 3 years of my life. It's also what I learned the most from, admittedly. And now when I'm working with executive clients, it's valuable, but uh, you've got to do the work and take time to step away from it with a coach in a business person's group with a therapist, whatever it takes for you to take a hard look at what's working, not what's not working, and my role in all of that. I'm not a victim of my own success, right? I created all of it, and that included the downsides parts of it.
No, and one thing I guess push back, but not really, because it's really in large agreement. But I think the one thing that at least that I found pulling from personal experience is sometimes you do need to get into the weeds, or there's opportunities by getting into the weeds. So give you an example. I don't mind. I don't love doing some of the things like client intake and getting some of the initial information. And I'd much rather be finding new ways to promote the business or outreaching or content generation, some of those things. And yet, what I found is, there's opportunities to set the firm apart. As an example, when you're pretty down in the weeds on ours, but when you provide the details for an invention, we have a onboarding form that walks you through it. Well, standard onboarding form for most of the law firms, even as of today, is maybe a Google Doc or Google Sheet if you're lucky. And half the time it's still a Word document that they send you over a template and you fill it in. And so we've taken the time to generate an online form and then taken it a step further, created what I call Digital Devin, which is just an AI avatar that gives you the 30-second or less snippet as to explain different aspects of the form. And it's not that I inherently love creating forms, but it gave an opportunity when I stood back and went through the client flow of the process, said, hey, here's an opportunity for us to step apart. So I think that, looking for that balance of sometimes you want to hand every possible thing that you don't like over to other people and you miss opportunities, balanced with are opportunities to bring people on that are much better at different aspects and they can do it better than you. And also it frees you up to focus on the aspects that you can add the most value. So I think it's not always necessarily what you love, but going through the activities that you can add the most value. It would be maybe my 2 cents on that as well.
Well, I know that Rudy Giuliani is now a controversial figure politically, but I think most people would agree that he was the best mayor in our lifetimes for New York City. And I went to hear him speak once, and one of the things he said was, in terms of leadership, is that you go to where the issue is. You literally physically go to it. And now, more recently, we have Elon Musk, who is certainly a big thinker, out of the box thinker, brilliant guy, all of that stuff. However, when he has a problem, I mean, he's famous for it, he sleeps on the factory floor, until the problem is solved. So that getting that balance down right is an art more than a science, but that
Absolutely.
you've got to get it right. You got to go there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a hard balance to find. And those that I think can find not a perfect balance, but a good balance between them are the ones that can set themselves apart and create opportunities that most people overlook. So I think that that's a great place to wrap up and a great takeaway. So now as I always try and keep these to a reasonable or bite-sized, in quotes, version of, or something that people can take away. I do always like to wrap up each episode with the same couple questions. So we're going to jump to those now. I guess just one question. So that question would be, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
Why is it what?
What is the biggest myth and why is
Why
it
is it
wrong?
wrong? Yeah. Biggest myth is that our training, our coaching is for everyone. It's not. Uh, I have two adopted children and special needs kids. A therapist helped a lot. I can comfortably say he saved my son's life. I would do anything for him. He has a kind of beautiful extra home, a vacation home. He claims I paid for it. I would pay for it again. I'd double it or triple it for what he did for my son. And during COVID, when I was kind of out of business, I went up and sat with him in that beautiful home in Estes Park, Colorado. And I asked him, "Why are you successful when so many therapists are not?" And his answer was a long answer, but it can be summarized in one word: readiness. He only accepts a patient if that patient is ready. Ready, ready, ready to rock and roll, ready to deal with whatever the issue is that concerns them and makes a difference for them, their family, their company. Readiness. And what I realize is over the years that if we get into a pattern in our industry of wanting that one more student, one more coaching client, one more team training, and they really aren't ready, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for them. Interestingly, even though we might get paid, or probably are paid, it doesn't work for us. There's no satisfaction, there's no joy, there's no learning in it. You just struggle to get them to listen, to get into the experience, to be serious. Uh, if people aren't ready, the biggest myth is readiness. And what's wrong about it is it's out of integrity, for both the provider, and in this case, the trainer, the coaching company, and for the receiver, it's out of integrity. It's wasting their time. They're not ready yet. And that doesn't mean they're not going to be ready in 1 week. Usually it's a little longer than that. But if you can give people a path to readiness, which you don't get any income from, you're truly serving the client in that moment. And they will or they won't take the path. And you've got to be okay with that also. But that's our biggest myth and what's wrong with it. It's a
Awesome. No,
lose-lose game.
great myth to dispel and a great takeaway. Well, now as people do want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Look, it's all about relationship. One way to get it is to get some value from me, get to know how I think and what I'm up to with my team. I have an extraordinary minute as a weekly email. It's an idea, it's a video, something that I've been personally attracted to with my comments on it, but all designed to be read in 1 minute or less. So it's a once a week little nutritional piece for the mind and the heart. You'll also get a 28-page essay that I've revised about 20 times over the years of success. Our 8 principles, all of that is free, and you can find it at extraordinarypeople.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely, yep.
Extraordinarypeople.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners are out there, if you have your own journey to share, your own expertise, that you want to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Robert, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
My great pleasure.
roll the dice.